Good evening. Thanks for joining us today. An adult film actress was in a courtroom with a lawyer for the President of the United States, a lawyer who paid to keep her quiet about an alleged affair with that president. And that wasn't the bombshell in the hearing, not even close. At the hearing in New York, the judge decided whether the president and Michael Cohen's legal teams will get to review files seized by the FBI before prosecutors do. More on that in a moment. But also, that was not the bombshell. The most stunning moment probably came when Michael Cohen was forced to reveal the identity of a mystery client whose name he tried to keep quiet, and that client is Fox News host Sean Hannity. So it would seem the president and Sean Hannity share more than dinners and frequent phone calls and a mutual love of Fox News programming. They also share an attorney. This did not come out willingly in court. Cohen's attorney said the client had asked not to have their name revealed. The judge said that wasn't a good enough reason to keep the name concealed, ordered Cohen's lawyers to reveal the name, and that name, as I said, was Sean Hannity. So Michael Cohen's clients that we know of, the president, former RNC official Elliot Brody, who paid off a woman he had an affair with, which led to an abortion, and Sean Hannity of Fox News. Here's the way Sean Hannity explained it on his radio show after the news broke, after Michael Cohen's legal team said explicitly in court, Sean Hannity is Michael Cohen's client.
I've known Michael a long, long time. And let me be very clear to the media. Michael never represented me in any matter. I never retained him in the traditional sense as retaining a lawyer. I never received an invoice from Michael. I never paid legal fees to Michael. But I have occasionally had brief discussions with him about legal questions about which I wanted his input and perspective. And I assume that those conversations were attorney-client confidential.
So he seems to be saying I was not really a client of attorney Michael Cohen's, but our conversations are confidential because he is an attorney and I am his client. Now, regardless of the exact nature of their attorney-client relationship, even if it is, as Hannity says on Twitter, almost exclusively about real estate, let's not forget that 1 week ago today, there was a raid on Michael Cohen's office, and Hannity reported on it on Fox News as if he had absolutely no connection to the story.
And this is a Fox News alert. President Trump's longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen, just had his office, his home, and his hotel that he was staying in raided by the FBI today in an early morning raid. Now, what that means is Mueller's witch hunt investigation is now a runaway train that is clearly careening off the tracks.
So no disclosure, no disclaimer, not even a casual mention that, oh, yeah, this guy also represents me in some form or fashion, mostly real estate. No mention of that, that he passes along free legal advice and private consultations. Sean Hannity also talks about it on his radio show.
This opens up an area where it seems that there's no limit at all into the fishing expedition that Mueller is now engaged in. And if he has access to everything that his personal attorney has, I can only imagine where that's going to lead.
He could definitely imagine at least one place where it might lead to his own name. Sean Hannity is already starting to fuss and fume that the media is going crazy with this and insists that there's no there. Perhaps there isn't, but not disclosing a business or legal relationship with someone you report on and have had as on your guests at least 16 times since since Donald Trump declared his candidacy, that doesn't sound either fair nor balanced. CNN crime and justice reporter Shimon Prokupecz was in the courtroom today. He joins us now. So talk about, first of all, the judge's ruling today.
So essentially, it was a small victory, I would say, perhaps, for Michael Cohen and his legal team. Their whole point in filing this motion was to be able to review the materials that the FBI seized a week ago, and they wanted to review it. They wanted to have an opportunity to discuss about what is privileged and what the government should not have access to. So today, the judge ordered prosecutors, the government here, to turn over, to make copies of various documents, some 10 boxes, it was revealed today in court, the FBI now has with material that they seized from Michael Cohen, electronic devices and hard drives. And all of that now has to be copied and handed over to Michael Cohen's attorneys.
So is it clear, based on what happened in court today, whether or not Sean Hannity actually is Michael Cohen's client?
Well, much like everything else since Friday with this hearing, it's been a little confusing because since Friday, the judge has been saying to Michael Cohen and his attorneys, tell us who Michael Cohen represents. And there's always been this blurred line. And I think this goes to the argument that prosecutors have been making. that Michael Cohen has these interesting relationships with people that aren't necessarily people he's representing. There's just this vague sort of line here that prosecutors say does not always mean that these people are his clients. Sean Hannity, as you played earlier, denied that Michael Cohen represented him. But Michael Cohen's attorneys used the argument that Michael Cohen was his attorney and therefore should not release who this third client was that wound up being Sean Hannity. Certainly, Anderson, I could tell you, having being in this courtroom when that happened, it was a stunning moment. I mean, there was just the audience, people sitting around the courtroom. The reaction was quite audible, and many folks were certainly shocked after the judge ordered him to release the name of this client, Anderson.
So just what does the ruling mean in terms of the investigation moving forward? It certainly seems to be a delay, yes?
Yeah, absolutely, Anderson. This is definitely a delay. The prosecutors did not want this. They've been arguing since Friday that this was a stall tactic by Michael Cohen and his attorney, by the president's attorneys who have now intervened, who also want to view this material. So this prevents the investigators from looking at any of the information, any of the documents that were seized in the raid. It's now up to a taint team that is run by the government that has no access to the investigation to go over some of the materials that are going to be provided to Michael Cohen's attorneys. But in terms of the investigation, in terms of this material that was seized, the investigators will not have access for it until the judge decides what they should look at, Anderson.
All right. Shimon Prokupecz, thanks. Lots to sort out. Joining me now are Gloria Borger and Milgram and David Axelrod, none of whom I have ever consulted with for private legal advice or free legal advice, nor real estate advice. So, Ann, we'll get to the Sean Hannity thing in a moment, but just the substance of the hearing. Who's happier tonight, the Michael Cohen, President Trump team, or Stormy Daniels?
I do think it's a mix, but I think I wouldn't classify it as a win for Michael Cohen and the president. I mean, their first ask was really, let us decide what's privileged and what isn't. Give us all the information back, let us go through it, and then we'll give to the government what we don't think is privileged. The judge said absolutely no to that. And so what the government wants is the ability for their taint team to review all the materials and then push out anything that is questionable to debate with the lawyers for Michael Cohen and the president. And what Michael Cohen's lawyer said is, okay, if you won't give it all to us, appoint a special master, which would be an independent third party that would go through all of it. Instead of the taint team. And the challenge for the government with that is that, and look, I think it's clear in a case like this that nothing that's attorney-client privilege is going to be reviewed by the investigators. The question is how they get there. And the government does do this regularly. The question is, will the judge defer to the government, as would normally be the case, or would she appoint a special master? The issue with the special master really becomes one of timing, that it tends to take longer and puts a little bit more delay. But I think that's what she's weighing now, and she hasn't decided that yet.
So she hasn't decided who the special master is?
She hasn't decided whether for certain she'll do a special master, but she asked to have 4 names given from each side. And that's an indication that she's seriously considering it. And so the lawyers have said that they'll provide those names to her tomorrow.
Who would normally be like a former judge or something?
A former judge, a former attorney general, former prosecutor, someone who might have been a U.S. attorney, but someone who would be a very well-respected lawyer.
Gloria, I mean, the longer the Cohen's team can run out the clock on this process, does it take some of the pressure off him to cooperate with the government, whether it's federal prosecutors or Manhattan or potentially a special counsel?
Well, it might, because it's significant for them to get judicial review, and that could obviously, if you've just been talking about, take longer. But I was speaking with a source today, a legal source who's close to this case, who said, look, the reason they got this search warrant in the first place leads you to believe that they're close to something. And so we don't know that what they are looking for was key evidence that they need in order to complete their case against Michael Cohen, or whether it's confirming evidence that they would just have liked. So if they were close and they wanted to just secure this evidence as additional evidence, then maybe they can go, they can do whatever they wanted to do with Michael Cohen in the first place without waiting for all of this, that they could continue to move. On the other hand, if they felt that they needed this evidence to indict, say, then it will take longer, and then it will help, Michael Cohen, because this is a process. And of course, they have the opportunity during this process to appeal.
David, I mean, as for the Sean Hannity revelation, he says he wasn't Michael Cohen's client in the quote unquote traditional sense. Do you have any idea what that means?
No. First of all, my instinct when I heard this was that somewhere there's a scandal writer, TV writer, or House of Cards writer slapping their head and saying, why didn't I think of this? I mean, it is so unbelievable, this twist of the plot. But I don't know what it could be. And obviously the fact that they said he was a client and he was embarrassed to have his name released, I think, was telling. If I were Hannity, I'd be embarrassed as well, having gone off on the rampage he did about this Cohen business without revealing that he was involved. Now, Sean Hannity is not at the end of the day a journalist. He's not a reporter. He's an infotainer. And so perhaps he doesn't hold himself to those standards. But can you imagine how the folks on Fox would have howled Anderson if you, for example, had shown up as a client in a situation like this? So, I think it's a sticky wicket. And if he's not a client, why did his lawyers say he was? So it raises all kinds of questions.
Yeah, and I mean, if you haven't paid somebody and you've consulted them for advice, Sean Hannity claims about real estate primarily, although I don't know what that means exactly, what the other stuff would have been. Can you automatically say it's privileged?
Well, you can still be a client even if you haven't paid a lawyer yet. And sometimes you get advice and will pay later. Sometimes you don't pay. But the real question is, were you asking for legal advice and guidance? And then the second piece of this is always that, if Sean Hannity had this conversation with Michael Cohen and somebody else was in the room, then it's not privileged. Mm-hmm. If they were talking about committing a crime, for example, or engaging in criminal behavior or fraud, it's not privileged. So it really does come down to
But if he's asking about some real estate deal,
sure,
if it's a business deal...
If it's a business deal and it's not legal advice, right, you could be on either side of that. And so I think, if it's for legal advice, look, how should I structure, how would you think about this legal arrangement? Then that could be attorney-client related.
Right.
Gloria, I mean, Hannity's, I guess, he's not a journalist, certainly. He's essentially, at this point, a shadow spokesman for the president. I guess, though, I will say I'm even surprised that he would not, just to inform his viewers, in the some 16 times that Michael Cohen has been on, that we counted since Donald Trump announced a candidacy, that he would not at least say, you know what, I've consulted Michael Cohen for advice over the years on real estate stuff.
Right. You would expect that someone would do that and say, in the interest of full disclosure, I've gone to Michael Cohen for advice informally over the years about real estate. That didn't happen. You point out he's not really a journalist. And, my sources say to me, look, he didn't specifically, when he was having these conversations with Michael Cohen, he didn't specifically say, oh, this is covered under attorney-client because it was so informal that it wouldn't need to be said. But at this point, it's very clear when you look at the court proceedings that Hannity expects it and didn't want his name mentioned, even mentioned today. And I think there's a sense that Michael Cohen kind of threw Sean Hannity under the bus here.
Well, it also, David, is interesting to me because, if Sean Hannity is one of his 3 clients in the last 10 years, that says a lot about what he's doing for President Trump. I mean, the second client was this RNC guy, this Republican donor, Elliot Brody, and with a hush payment to a former, Playmate, I think it was, or Playboy model, or Penthouse model. I get them confused. Playmate, I'm told. It does seem to then be really his client is Donald Trump.
Right. And I don't think that Michael Cohen has been spending late nights rifling through legal documents and journals and codicils. He is what he has been advertised to be. He is a fixer, and he has been Donald Trump's fixer for the last so many years. And I think what the government is arguing, and Ann would know better than I, is that he really is hardly a lawyer at all. That much of what he does has nothing to do with law in the traditional sense. He's out there and he's fixing stuff. Yeah. And so I think that's why they feel like the privilege doesn't apply to much of the material that they have gathered up.
Yeah, it's a fascinating day. Gloria Borger and Milgram, David Axelrod. Thanks. Up next, Hannity, Cohen, and the president, the love that dare not speak its name. The president pushes his TV program. The TV host pushes the president. And Michael Cohen seems to whisper in both their ears. Details on that. Plus, Stormy Daniels was in court today. You'll hear what she had to say, and I'll speak with her lawyer, Michael Hannity. Stick around.
Hiring? Every business needs great people, and a better way to find them. Something better than posting your job online and just praying for the right people to see it. ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive, so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/AC360. That's ZipRecruiter.com/AC360. ZipRecruiter.com/AC360. ZipRecruiter. The smartest way to hire.
So now that Michael Cohen's mysterious third client has been revealed to be Fox host Sean Hannity, the feedback loop continues to feed upon itself. This is a new one, but we've known for a while that the president takes cues or gets some pointers from Fox News and vice versa, and that he and Hannity are in frequent contact. Randy Kay tonight has more.
How good is Hannity, he said. How good is Hannity?
President Donald Trump in Phoenix last year, slamming the media as divisive, yet complimenting his pal Sean Hannity. The Fox News host and the president have a long and cozy history. As recently as last month, Trump hosted Hannity for dinner at his Mar-a-Lago resort. The two men discussed immigration, with Hannity pushing Trump on the border wall for the sake of the upcoming midterm elections. Hannity acted as an informal advisor during the campaign, but their relationship began long before Trump ran for president. Back in 2009, Trump was a regular guest on Hannity's show, talking about the Tea Party. The two men became fast friends, with Hannity backing Trump on his outlandish conspiracy theories, like Trump's false notion that President Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States.
Look, he's got a grandmother in Kenya who said he was born in Kenya at the hospital.
The issue could go away in a minute. Just show the
I don't
certificate.
understand.
The Trump-Hannity connection is unique. The two reportedly still talk regularly. As frequent Fox News guest Newt Gingrich put it, it's the New York thing. They talk the same language. Over the years, Hannity has become one of the most dependable pro-Trump voices on TV, openly advising the president on issues like Russia.
If I was advising the president, I'd say, let this investigation go forward.
Hannity hitched himself to the future president early on. At the 2015 CPAC gathering, Hannity wore a Trump brand necktie to interview Trump. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough has reportedly called Hannity Trump's lapdog. But that hasn't stopped Hannity from defending the president.
So the never-Trumpers, like Senator Flake, they don't seem to understand that by blocking the president's agenda, and you see the reaction he gets around the country, they're only harming you, the American people.
Listen to Hannity in the hours after Donald Trump's former campaign manager was indicted.
This indictment has nothing, let me repeat, nothing to do with Trump-Russia collusion. Zip, zero, nada.
And like the president, Hannity dismisses the Russia investigation as a witch hunt. The two men are so close that even after Trump bragged about grabbing women's genitals on the Access Hollywood tape, Hannity stood by him.
Ken David had 500 concubines, for crying out loud.
Hannity even backed the president on his false claims that his inaugural crowd was the largest ever. Trump, for his part, often promotes Hannity's program, like this recent tweet, "Big show tonight on Sean Hannity." It's a bromance where it seems both men benefit. Randy Kay, CNN, Palm Beach, Florida.
With me now, criminal defense attorney Professor Alan Dershowitz, author of the book Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy, and former Obama White House ethics czar Norm Eisen. Professor Dershowitz, welcome back. You were on Hannity's program the day of the Cohen raid. You said it's a very dangerous day for lawyer-client relations. What do you make of the fact that you were actually saying that to somebody who, according to Michael Cohen, was a client, although according to Sean Hannity, not a client.
Well, he was in a very difficult situation. He's not going to not talk about the Cohen raid, obviously, and he didn't want it to be known that he was a client. Look, I think he had to make a choice, and I think the choice should have been to disclose to the viewers that he has a relationship. He could have described the relationship in any way he wanted, but the viewers have a right to know there's a relationship.
Just in terms of, do you believe he is a client? If somebody is just getting free legal advice from somebody who he has on his show a lot, what is that?
Well, every week somebody comes over to me when I'm leaving here or somewhere else and says, I just want to ask you one quick legal question, and I'm very tough. No, you have to establish a lawyer-client relationship. Otherwise, whatever you tell me is public knowledge. So, I taught legal ethics for 40 years. Norm Eisen was the legal ethicist. We understand that. A lawyer like Cohen, somebody like Hannity, wouldn't really understand that. People sometimes hand me $1 and they say, here's $1. I've just retained you. You're my lawyer. No, I give the $1 back.
If you accepted $1 retainer, you wouldn't be much of a lawyer. And you are. Ambassador Eisen, Sean Hannity says Cohen never did any legal work involving a third party, never retained him or received an invoice. This was mostly about real estate. How does this smell to you?
Well, it does smell a little off, Anderson. I have to agree with Alan. There are ethics rules, just like we as lawyers have ethics rules. And it's universal among journalists. The radio, television, and digital journalist news organization, the International Federation of Journalists, all of them have a code. You have to, if you can't have conflicts, if you do, you have to disclose. So I don't think it's right. And there's other strange things, Anderson, because Hannity threw Cohen under the bus when he said, I never retained him. He, words to the effect, Cohen didn't represent him. He never gave him money. Then Hannity switched, and he did just what Alan talked about. But it sounded a little too schooled. On his show, he said, well, maybe I gave him $10 and said I want to be protected by the attorney-client privilege. Come on. Clients don't talk like that. So I think the whole thing reeks.
But it doesn't work that way. Can a person believe if they're talking to a friend who's an attorney and getting just some advice, and we don't know if it's actually a legal deal or a real estate deal that is not talking about, can they expect there to be attorney-client? How do you know if there's going to be attorney-client privilege?
Well, anybody ought to ask. You ought to be very clear about it. But people do have expectations. People do think that if they talk to me at a cocktail party where there are other people around and ask me for legal advice, they subjectively believe that somehow they've established a lawyer-client relationship with me, but they haven't.
So you really have to ask somebody, you say, is this a privilege?
And the lawyer should take the initiative and say, this is not a lawyer-client conversation. Do not count on me protecting you if I'm subpoenaed or even asked by the press whether we've had a conversation. So it's very important. Now, the one area where I think the judge may have created a problem is when she categorically ruled today that the name of a client is never covered by lawyer-client privilege, if that's what she said. I haven't read her opinion. There are exceptions. There are some cases where the name is regarded as lawyer-client classified. If going to the lawyer itself requires confidentiality. For example, this is a good close example. If there's a lawyer who's only a fixer and only fixes cases involving guys who've had affairs with women, you don't want to be known as that guy's client, because if you are, you know why you went to him. And in cases like that, the courts have protected the names of clients when they've sought to be disclosed.
Interesting. Professor Dershowitz, thanks very much. Ambassador Norm Eisen, thanks as well. Still ahead, Stormy Daniels had strong words for the president's lawyer, Michael Cohen, what she said outside the courtroom. We'll also talk to her attorney, Michael Avenatti, when we come back.
The right sheets can take your sleep and your style to the next level. With Boll & Branch, the upgrade has never been more affordable. Every set is crafted from 100% organic cotton. They get softer and softer over time. That's why they have thousands of 5-star reviews, and even 3 U.S. presidents have Boll & Branch sheets. Try them for 30 nights, and if you don't love them, send them back for a full refund. Go to bowlandbranch.com today for $50 off your first set of sheets, plus free U.S. shipping with promo code CNN2. Spelled B-O-L-L and branch.com. That's bowlandbranch.com, promo code CNN2.
We're now on our breaking news. A new ruling tonight as the president's lawyer, Michael Cohen, tries to block prosecutors from reviewing records seized from him. A federal judge ordering the government to turn over Cohen's records and allowing Cohen's legal team to look at what they believe should be protected under attorney-client privilege. Also, Fox News host Sean Hannity was outed as one of Cohen's mystery clients, though Mr. Hannity is pushing back on that. And adult film star Stormy Daniels was also in the courtroom today. Some of the documents seized from Cohen last week were related to the $130,000 payment he made to Daniels right before the election to keep her quiet about an alleged affair with the president. Stormy Daniels spoke to reporters as she left the courthouse.
So for years, Mr. Cohen has acted like he is above the law. He has considered himself and openly referred to himself as Mr. Trump's fixer. He is played by a different set of rules, or should we say no rules at all. He has never thought that the little man, or especially women, and even more women like me, mattered. That ends now. My attorney and I are committed to making sure that everyone finds out the truth and the facts of what happened, and I give my word that we will not rest until that happens.
Well, also in the courtroom today was Ms. Daniels' attorney, Michael Hannity, who joins us now. I'll get to the Sean Hannity thing in a moment. Just the ruling by the judge today, do you see it as a partial win for Michael Cohen? Because since they at least get to name a potential master to look over the documents that have been taken.
Well, I mean, I'd call it more like kissing your sister. I don't know that it's a win. I mean, it's certainly not a loss. But what they really wanted to do, Anderson, was they wanted to get control of the documents back and get them back from the government so they could make the determinations relating to privilege with the president, the Trump organization.
That would have been a very big win, obviously, if they were the ones determining what was privileged and what was not.
Correct. And one of the reasons that we were there was to make sure that did not happen, because we believe the integrity of the documents, making sure documents don't magically disappear, is of the utmost importance for our case out in California. So we wanted to avoid any spoliation, what they call spoliation in the law, or anything of that nature. And so we were happy that the judge seems very focused on ensuring that that does not happen.
You said, I think it was yesterday, that you believe within the next 90 days there may be an unsealing of an indictment against Cohen for what you said were a host of very serious offenses. We don't know that that's true. I'm not sure what you're basing that on, but what happened today, did that slow down your belief in that timetable?
No, not at all. I stand behind that. It's my belief based on some pretty good information that I have. And look, I think my track record has been pretty good over the last 6 weeks. I think that's going to happen in the next 90 days. And I think it's going to be a significant domino to fall. And there's going to be serious consequences from there on out.
What was it like in the courtroom when the revelation was made about Sean Hannity?
Well, Anderson, you need to understand there was a huge buildup. There was about 20 minutes of buildup to that moment.
Where the Cohen's attorneys were resisting this.
Correct. Michael Cohen's attorneys were resisting disclosing who the third client was. There was considerable debate back and forth with the judge, with the assistant U.S. attorney, with others in the courtroom, back and forth as to whether it was going to be disclosed. In fact, at one point, Michael Cohen's attorney told the judge that they had been instructed by this client, at that time we didn't know who it was, that if she ordered the name disclosed, they were to take an immediate appeal of the judge's ruling.
They claimed the client had said that, meaning Sean Hannity had said that.
Correct. And it was basically a warning shot to Judge Wood. And, Judge Wood's been around a long time. She's an exceptional judge. She's not going to be intimidated by stuff like that. But they were trying to send a message. It went nowhere with her. And then ultimately, the judge said, I want you to publicly disclose it. And the attorney for Michael Cohen said, well, do you want me to state it orally, or put it on a piece of paper? And I thought for sure he was going to put it on a piece of paper and hand it up to the judge as kind of a Hail Mary, with the idea that maybe the judge looks at it and says, well, I want to think about this. But lo and behold, he said the client's name is Sean Hannity. And it was like, Anderson, a bomb went off in this federal courtroom. I mean, there were gasps. There was, 8 or 10 journalists that all of a sudden abruptly stood up.
Were you one of the people gasping?
No, I was surprised. But, quite honestly, and it's been reported, I mean, my reaction was, well, at least now we know why Fox News hasn't been covering our case for 6 weeks.
It is surprising that Sean Hannity has not, and all the times he's interviewed Michael Cohen, ever said, oh, just full disclosure, we have a long relationship. I ask him for advice sometimes.
Well, again, I'm not a journalist. I mean, I don't know the standards by which you and other exceptional journalists live by. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, are going to analyze this and what needed to be disclosed or not. What I will say is this. I think Michael Cohen's, I think Sean Hannity should have had his own counsel in the courtroom. I think that Michael Cohen's counsel, somewhat threw him under the bus in the hearing. I mean, that's my takeaway from it. I think it should have been handled differently than it was.
You filed an objection to the president and Michael Cohen's request for a stay in the Daniels lawsuit to the criminal investigation in New York. Do you have a sense of when that stay will be ruled on?
So their reply is due on Tuesday evening, and Judge Otero, who's incredibly thorough, and he is on top of things like you cannot believe. I would imagine that he's probably going to issue a ruling on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, and we're very confident in our position.
So your case moves irregardless of what happens in New York?
That's correct. I mean, they're on parallel tracks right now, and if we're successful in defeating the motion to stay, then next up is our motion relating to the deposition of Michael Cohen and the president.
Wow. Michael Avenatti, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Coming up, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley said new sanctions against Russia were coming. The president reportedly said not so fast. We'll ask the Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley about that and the war of words between the president and his former FBI Director Jim Comey. That's next.
From executive producer Jordan Peele, Tracy Morgan is back.
What?
In a new TBS series that the New York Times calls a gritty, funny comedy.
I just did 15 years in prison. What happened to Brooklyn?
Starring Tiffany Haddish.
You gonna bust in there like the Kool-Aid man.
And Cedric the Entertainer.
You thought she was just gonna wait for you? She just got lost. She got lost on another man's bouncy house.
Don't miss Tracy Morgan's return to TV.
Second chances are a beautiful thing.
The Last OG. Tuesdays, 10:30, 9:30 Central. Only on TBS.
There was an announcement we expected from the Trump administration today that did not come, tied to Syria and Russia. Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, mentioned it yesterday. Take a look what she said.
So you will see that Russian sanctions will be coming down. Secretary Mnuchin will be announcing those on Monday if he hasn't already. And they will go directly to any sort of companies that were dealing with equipment related to Assad and chemical weapons use. And so I think everyone is going to feel it at this point. I think everyone knows that we sent a strong message, and our hope is that they listen to it.
Well, that did not happen today. I want to find out why. Joining us now is Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Hogan, thanks for being with us. When Nikki Haley said that yesterday, that Russian sanctions are going to be announced today, did she misspeak? Was she misinformed? Did the announcement get canceled after she spoke? And is the White House concerned at all that it may reinforce the narrative that things are chaotic?
No, look, I mean, UN Ambassador Haley has done an incredible job for this administration, one of the strongest voices for the American ideals across the globe. But
so what happened?
The administration is looking at sanctions on Russia, potentially some more sanctions, quite frankly, but we don't have any announcement to make at this time.
So how did she, I mean, because, everybody, as you said, she's very practiced and very careful in what she says and often has private conversations with the president before she appears on television. From all the reporting that I've read, did she just misspeak, or was she misinformed, or did the president change his mind?
Look, I obviously can't speak for Nikki Haley. She was my governor. I've known her for a long time, both being from South Carolina. But what I can tell you is there is a chance that we do issue more sanctions. We just don't have a decision yet from the administration.
The Washington Post, as you probably know, is reporting that the president himself halted them because he was not comfortable executing them at this point. And if that's true, do you know why the president isn't comfortable executing sanctions against Russia right now?
Look, I'm not going to get into internal deliberations as to what the president will do or won't do as it relates to potential sanctions forthcoming on Russia. What I can tell you, though, is no one's been tougher on Russia than this president, as you know.
Well, it sounds like Nikki Haley's actually tougher than this president.
Well, that's not true at all. Look, the president is the only one who can make those decisions, and he's the one who puts forth the sanctions. Barack Obama wouldn't give lethal aid to the Ukraine. He wouldn't open up oil exports to Eastern Europe. President Donald Trump did both of those things. We've closed down 3 diplomatic facilities in the country, in San Francisco, New York, and Washington, D.C. We've expelled hundreds of Russians back to their country. I mean, this president has taken a tough stand on Vladimir Putin. It continues to this day, up to and including the fact we just struck Syria, one of Russia's allies, and we're considering more. We just don't have any more announcements to make on those potential sanctions today.
The president did address the nation on Friday, promising to respond to the Syrians' use of chemical weapons with, quote, all instruments of our national power, military, economic, and diplomatic. How is he responding economically if with no new sanctions?
Well, look, I mean, what the president did was come up with a leadership plan, quite frankly, that brought together our partners and allies in the region. He put together a surgical strategic strike to try and stop Syria in their use of chemical weapons on its own people. We all saw the videos. We all saw the pictures. It was gruesome. It was horrific. Russia also complicit in that for telling us for years that they were working to stop that chemical weapons program and didn't do it. This president stood up and said, we're not going to have that happen anymore. We're going to focus on joining with our partners and allies to ensure that those chemical weapons, that infrastructure was shut down, and we hit a surgical attack on those, and it stopped it.
That was military, and I get diplomatic because he did it in conjunction with the UK and France. But just economic, we haven't really seen anything.
But it's economic, too. If Syria can't rebuild, they don't have the money to do anything. When you do systematic destruction like we did with our partners
so economic
in France
wasn't
and the
a
UK,
reference to new sanctions?
There are new potential sanctions out there, Anderson. I'm not going to get ahead or get into hypotheticals what the president may or may not do. We don't telegraph what we do in this White House as opposed to previous administrations.
Well, actually, the president did telegraph, using smart weapons to bomb Syria, but... Anyway, I want to ask you about James Comey. Initially, when Comey initially cleared Hillary Clinton, the email investigation, President Trump criticized him, saying it was a rigged system. Then when Comey announced the reopening of the case in October, the president said that it took guts for Comey to do that and that he brought back his reputation. Now the president is calling him a slimeball and a liar. It does appear as if the president's opinion of Comey is really only based on whether or not Comey's actions are favorable or unfavorable to the president. What would you say to that?
Not true. The president ultimately fired James Comey. Look, James Comey is a disgruntled, discredited, disgraced individual who was fired from the FBI by President Donald Trump. And he was fired because he leaked information, some of which may or may not be classified, according to senators like Chuck Grassley, and then he lied about it. And as the chief the head of the highest law enforcement division in all the land, you cannot use politics, poll numbers, and personal bias to make decisions, and that's exactly what James Comey did.
Okay, but I'm
every
confused.
time he opens his mouth, and you know this, Anderson, he was the most hated person in this town until President Donald Trump fired him. Now he's the toast of the town. He leads every newscast, every podcast, every broadcast.
I'm confused because when he was fired, I interviewed Kellyanne Conway that night. You all sent out a lot of people on television, and you were all saying the reason he was fired was the way he treated Hillary Clinton. Then the next day, the president said to Lester Holt it was actually Russia. And now you're saying he was fired for leaking information?
No, I'm saying it's all of those things. Go back and look at what we now know.
That's the first time I heard that he was fired for leaking information.
Look, right. You see this book tour now, and you see all the things that are starting to come out that James Comey himself admitted to doing. So, this is what the problem is. And when this town, as you know, the rhetoric and rancor
stories are shifting, though. Like it was being mean to Hillary Clinton, which always seemed unusual, and the next day the president says it's Russia, and now it's leaking.
But it's not mutually exclusive, Anderson. All these things work together to show exactly why James Comey is a disgraced individual. Okay. It takes a lot to unite Republicans and Democrats in this town with the rancor and rhetoric that exists. As you know, the polarization is incredible, like the likes of which I've never seen before. But congratulations to James Comey, because you united everybody around your ridiculous book tour.
All right. The New York Times reported recently that the president's advisors are more concerned with the investigation to Michael Cohen than they are about Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. Is the president himself also more concerned about the Cohen investigation at this point or the Mueller investigation?
Look, I can tell you that the president is a little bit frustrated and concerned about the direction that the Mueller investigation has taken. But we've been fully cooperative with Special Counsel Mueller. And as you know, we've turned over thousands and thousands of pages of documents. We've given several people over for testimony. I mean, we've cooperated fully.
But to the question, though, it did seem like the president, when he was meeting with his military team talking. This is prior to the strike on Syria. He clearly was very upset about the Cohen raid. Is that because he views it as more of a threat than the Mueller investigation, or is it more of a concern for him right now?
Look, I haven't spoken with him directly about the Cohen raid. What I can tell you is the president's concerned about the direction that the Mueller investigation has turned. But as far as Michael Cohen's concerned, I'm going to have to refer you to him or his personal attorney for any comment. Any comment there.
The other day, Sarah Sanders was asked if Michael Cohen is still in the president's confidence? Is he still an employee? I mean, is he still a personal attorney of the president? Do you know the answer to that? Because Sarah Sanders, it wasn't really clear.
No, she answered it today, actually, on Air Force One, and she said what we all know, which is absolutely the president has a relationship with him. I don't know the exact relationship as it relates to a professional agreement they may or may not have, but you also know that the president has many attorneys. This isn't his only one, so they still do have a relationship.
But you're not sure if he's still an attorney.
To the extent of that, I can't tell you how extensive it is.
All right, Hogan Gidley, I appreciate you being on. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the time, Anderson.
Up next, what supporters of President Trump have to say about the Comey interview. Our Gary Tuckman watched it with a group of Republicans in South Carolina. We'll get their reaction when we continue.
Hey, it's Howard Beck, and I've got Kevin Pritchard on Bleacher Report's The Full 48.
They've overachieved wildly, and every single game, sometimes I leave the arena, I go, how did we win that game? But we keep doing it. You know, it's like we played well down the stretch in the last 4 or 5 minutes. We can be a tough team, and we've lost close games, but we win our fair share, too.
So check out The Full 48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
More now on fire to FBI Director James Comey's first TV interview promoting his new explosive book, where he certainly doesn't hold back and goes after President Trump, calling him unfit for office, referring to him as a mob boss. The White House says President Trump watched bits and pieces of it, not the entire thing. Our Gary Tuckman watched all of it with a group of supporters of the president. Here's his report.
23 active members of the Charleston County, South Carolina Republican Party scrutinizing the James Comey interview.
What did it feel like to be James Comey in the last 10 days of that campaign after you sent the letter?
It sucked. I walked around vaguely sick to my stomach, feeling beaten down, felt like I was totally alone, that everybody hated me, and that there wasn't a way out.
We still do. In this living room, no evidence of any pity for Comey. What did you think of James Comey?
I thought he seemed weak.
Weak.
Gary, I think that,
Thin skin. Fantasyland.
I think very petty. He's 6'8" tall, but he's a very little man. I think he diminished the office of the FBI.
The head of the FBI doesn't feel uncomfortable. That's sort of lily-livered. It's not what I would expect from a man.
What's lily-livered mean?
Weak.
A key moment of the interview.
And I don't think he's medically unfit to be president. I think he's morally unfit to be president.
Was a moment that angered many here. And Comey said he's morally unfit to be president.
And who is he to say? Who is he to judge that?
Judgment. Who is he to pass judgment?
Why isn't he allowed to pass judgment? He's the former FBI director.
You know what? He was the top cop, and he had an opportunity to call Trump out, and he didn't. If he really felt that Trump was unfit, morally unfit, he had an opportunity.
Would you have believed him if he said it at the time?
Why would we?
And what about Comey saying the president asked for his loyalty? And the president's denial of that.
How do we know that he wasn't asking for him to protect our country's loyalty, be loyal to your
because
country?
President Trump asked a lot of people for their loyalty, and it's not about the country. That wouldn't be against the personality that we know of Mr. Trump.
Well, it's hard.
As a businessman, I think you would ask for loyalty. If you're on my party, you're going to be working for me. We need to be cohesive. And yes, loyalty is very important.
But that's not the FBI director's job to be loyal to the president. That's the problem.
It's not his job.
Well, we used to think the FBI was the highest.
Right off the bat and say, I've got this big, thick file on you about Russians and prostitutes and stuff like that. That set the stage very poorly.
So you blame Comey for making Trump paranoid.
Yeah, that's exactly what he intended to do. When he went in on the very first meeting,
that was
like,
his
Mr.
intention.
President, guess what? I'm going to work with you, but I got this on you.
Do you know Comey's a Republican? Mueller's a Republican? Rosenstein are Republicans. So why would Comey want to make Trump be uncomfortable at the beginning?
Why did J. Edgar put a file on everybody?
Well, that was J. Edgar Hoover. That was a long time ago. Why do you think Comey would want to make Trump uncomfortable?
They're part of the swamp, and he's trying to drain the swamp.
Right.
The consensus here is that Comey is a dishonest broker. Are any of you troubled with the president's grasp on the truth at some point?
I'm not going to say that I think it's all. I don't know that anybody's 100% always truthful in big, powerful situations like he's in.
Why do you think Jim Comey would say all these lies about the president of the United States after this career?
Because his childhood dream, and his childhood dream, he became the director of the FBI. And that was spoiled by Donald Trump.
Does that not trouble anybody?
No.
How come?
We're way better off without James Comey. Way better off.
Gary joins us now. The Republicans in Charleston, do any of them acknowledge the possibility that by publicly reopening up the Clinton email investigation, Comey may have swayed the election?
Well, Anderson, we asked our group if anyone thought that Comey could have swayed the election towards Donald Trump, and nobody raised their hand for a few seconds. And then one man in the back raised his hand and said, yes, I think it is a possibility. And then later someone came up to me and said the same thing. So this group wasn't 100% unanimous. Also on another topic, the nickname that Donald Trump has given James Comey, that nickname being, quote, Slimeball. Many members of the group said they think it's fine to say Slimeball. Others say that it wasn't a very good thing for the president to say.
Cool. Well, we appreciate everybody sitting down with you. Gary, thanks very much. Up next, the president's attorney, Michael Cohen, forced by a judge to reveal a mystery client. Fox News host Sean Hannity. Mr. Hannity is taking some issue with that when we continue.